beautiful people. Yeah. Now tuned into one of your hosts with the most. So we're just gonna talk about Hov's comeback story. And I know people could say Hov ain't never left, this, that, and third. But I really believe we just witnessed his pushback to all the criticism, all the hate, all the talk, all the shots. And we all know Hov doesn't do interviews, or speak publicly about his personal issues when it comes to this type of stuff. He usually vents through music. And this is exactly what he did last night. Now, the first thing I'm gonna say is, anyone who doesn't think the bars were heavy and, he didn't really give some good, bars and wordplay, I think this is gonna be a song on his new album or EP, whatever. And it's gonna sound a lot better on the beat that he says it on. Of course, he said a freestyle, and we all assuming it was a freestyle, but this was way more than a freestyle. This was a record. And it might not even be the first verse on the record, it could be the last, mid-verse, or whatever, or a bonus track on the whole EP. But it's gonna sound better on the beat. He's done that multiple times. His brother Big meaning Notorious B.I.G. has done that, where he spit a freestyle that was actually a verse on a song, and the freestyle was tough, but on the song it was legendary. I just think, I'm not picking no sides. I do think that he has every right to say how you feel about all the shots he's been getting and the shots that's been coming his way. So we can't play that he's being a bully or anything like that. Like, a lot of people have been coming at him for a while. He finally expressed himself, which, I'm really a JAYZ fan, and I'm talking about musically. I don't know him personally, so I can't say how I feel about him personally, but I know for a fact, musically, he's one of the top. And he's because he really takes it serious. He takes it serious. He thinks about his skills and his talent as art. Still, after all the success, he doesn't shy away from the artist. He doesn't claim to be a rapper. That's different. But he knows this is like a form of art, and he always uses it like that. So, especially from New York. If I wasn't from New York, I would probably feel different. I would probably look at it different. But I'm from New York, and from where I'm from, this is definitely a legend. So, to go through what I've heard and assessed, him going at, of course, Dame, I think it hurts him more than gives him pleasure. Honestly, I think it hurts him more than gives him pleasure, because he doesn't want to do that to Dame. He doesn't want to do that to Dame. I think Dame's back is against the wall because, of course, his ego, and he's very intelligent and knows the business. But he didn't understand how program is bigger than the business, and that's why he's where he's at. I think Dame didn't listen when he was warned, and I'm sure Jay tried to speak to him, and it's none of my business. I'm not nowhere in the same boat, but I've had an era of being hard to deal with myself, so I can see how people would not be comfortable coming to him trying to explain to him what's really going on when they know he's not going to be in favor of it. So yeah, I think Jay could have really went harder on him. He didn't, but of course he shot back, gave him. I mean, it's almost like an alley-oop, because him bringing him up gives him light. So now I'm assuming Dame is going to get more personal and get some more interviews about Hov, which is the most important thing. His interviews about Hov. It's not about... I listen to people interview him, and as much as he has going on, I don't think nobody wants to hear what he has going on more than they want to hear how he feels about Hov and the breakup of The Rock, which is a shame because he has so much wisdom. And on to the next. The Kanye thing was basically, well, of course, when you're talking about children, that was unnecessary. So he basically addressed that, and he knows that Kanye is not all there, but you're not that crazy. That's what he's saying. Like, you're not that crazy. And when you see him, when someone acts like it's something, and when you see them and it's not, it's like, you're not that crazy, because you're smart enough to know how to act when you're around me. But talking about my kids, he didn't even talk about him talking about his wife. You talk about my kids, you went too far. There's no coming back. So, and he really talked about violence with that, which is, hopefully Jay never puts himself in that position to throw everything away for that. That's definitely what they will want from one of our powerful figures. So that Kanye thing went too far with the children. He went at Nicki, and he went at Nicki, and it was so, the way he went at Nicki was real. It was art. He mimicked her performance and used words to mimic how she performed, but to go at her, which is all art. And it was definitely a respect for Nicki, because she was a force to be reckoned with, and we don't know what's her situation. I'm definitely Nicki Minaj as a rapper fan, because I think she's phenomenal as a rapper. I think she had the total package, and like I said, we don't understand that it's bigger than business. A lot of us. I'm nowhere in the loop, but I'm not an idiot. Most of us are not idiots. I think they had to show her too. Someone, I don't know who. I'm not gonna say Rock Nation. Someone had to show her that it's never bigger than business. I mean, it's bigger than business. So she was in a position to be the biggest female artist of all time, and she lost that to Cardi. I don't care what nobody says. Cardi is the biggest female artist of all time. Period. As a hip hop artist, she's the biggest. And it didn't take much, but for her to do the same thing that happened to her to Cardi, which was not only admire the person that she looked up to, kind of curved up or didn't acknowledge her the way she wanted, which was Little Kim to me. And these are all my opinions. So I don't have a dog in the fight, but these are my opinions. If it makes sense, it makes sense. If it doesn't, so be it. But Little Kim didn't acknowledge Nicki the way she wanted. So Nicki went crazy on her. And because of Nicki's status, it went in her favor. But on the other hand, when it came to Cardi, I think Nicki tried it again, but she didn't understand that the tables turned. So it didn't work in her favor. And Nicki had, like I said, Nicki's a writer to my knowledge. She had one of the biggest verses on Monster, if not the biggest verse on Monster. And anytime I talk about Nicki's skills, I bring that song up because, like, it was really one of the toughest. If a guy said it, it was tough. So for Nicki to say it, it was crazy. But blaming Hov, and they might owe her some money, and just bringing his name up in bad press, pushing the envelope, and her situation with her guy. Like I said, what's on record with crime and with the law is not always a fact. We know that when we're from the streets or where we come from. Once it's on paper, though, it's on paper. It might not be a fact, but it's on paper. So that's like the worst thing, like for someone to have something on paper, because people that don't know any better is gonna run with that. So it was an easy lane for him to go at with her, and to say she's back on that stuff. I mean, it's to say that he might have knew something she was on. I don't know. It was just, he took his shots at her, and I think he felt like she was someone to take a shot at, which was not a bad thing for her too. And Drake, I don't know if going at Drake was a good thing. He could have ignored it, but I think it's some of the publicity and marketing that is necessary, because we all know if Drake came in the game as an artist, you wanted to be. I don't think nobody didn't want to be Hov. I don't think nobody didn't. Like the big homies after Hov was like Wayne, Lil Wayne, T.I., JAYZ. You got Drake. Of course you had Snoop with Hov, but you don't get a lot of the people going for the Snoop thing. Of course, I think Nip took some of that, but Hov was the pioneer of the music biz, and literally, no pun intended, the blueprint. I don't care what nobody says. If you say he wasn't, it's a lie. The Reasonable Doubt album was over a lot of people's head because Hov came in the game as a veteran in the streets. And that was a veteran album. When I first heard it, I didn't understand it. And I was a young person, active. But as I got older, it just felt, it hit better. It hit better. And if I had to say, Reasonable Doubt was a classic, of course. And I think American Gangster, although was depicted as a soundtrack, was Hov's way of making Reasonable Doubt then and now, if that makes sense. That was the Reasonable Doubt then and now. You had Reasonable Doubt, then you had American Gangster. It was literally the then and now. And I've never confirmed this with anyone, but if this somehow gets to him or his people, I wish that would be confirmed, because it was perfect, But outside of that album, everything else was literally the mainstream of hip hop. Like, no, I don't care who. It was big artists. Yes, we had Eminem. Yes, we had Eminem. Yes, we had Nelly. Yes, we had, I mean, of course, the legend LL, who was back then with them. But no one had an impact like Hov to the people that impacted the culture. So the people that looked up to his students won't understand Hov's impact because they looked up to his students. But like T.I., JAYZ, Drake, Lil Wayne, Fab, like these are his understudies, and it's not no disrespect. It's just a fact. So I think Drake falls under that category also. But I think what Drake did was strategic. I think what Drake did was strategic, and it was like an Eminem 50 Cent move, and it's working. So that's the Drake thing. Who else he addressed? Moschino. Don't know him. Don't know much about him. I think he's capitalizing off the internet, which is cool. I don't know none of his music, none of that. You know, he could be a real gangster from Philly, and that's what's up. We know gangsters don't, the gangster life don't pay the bills, but he talked a lot about Hov in a negative way. And the fact that, again, I think that's an alley-oop for him. Congratulations, you got mentioned. Congratulations, you got mentioned. Hov mentioned him, and that's a big up for him. So salute to him. And one thing I want to say is when they talk about, I know and I'm guilty of it as well. I watch Moschino's videos because he's entertaining. But he spoke about the All I Need record. If you know what that is, it was on what was that, Blueprint album. It was one of my favorite. And they saying he stole that from some guys. He actually had someone produce that record. So is it possible that the producer heard that record or produced it for them and felt like this is a better record for Hov, and Hov took the record and made it a classic or a bigger record? Is that stealing the record? Or is the producer guilty of double dipping? That's something that we can argue. I don't think Hov was chilling in that record and guys came on the radio and he like, yo, I want to do that over. Boom, boom, boom. I don't think that's the case. I think the producer might be like, yo, I got a joint. I gave it to these cats. They probably owe me $1,000 or $500, or it ain't going nowhere. Here you go. And Hov did. Is that stealing, or is that the producer double dipping and him making it a bigger record? Because if the record was out with them, we would have never heard it. We would have never heard it. I don't care what you say. They had the record out that was on their mixtape in their town, in a club, whatever. Cute. We would have never heard it. It would have never been a big record. And the responsibility falls on the producer. All right? Just to nip down. That's just not only on that song. Any record. If a producer produces a record in his hometown, and it's a banger, it goes nowhere, then he gets with an artist and it's like, yo, this is my catalog. And he's like, oh, it becomes a reference track automatically. That goes for R&B, hip hop, whatever. It's a reference track. If it wasn't paid for, if it didn't go nowhere, and if you don't have the lawyers to sue to prove that that's your record, it's a reference track. The blame goes on the producer, if anything. If anything. Now, if you wrote the lyrics, you wrote the melody, I believe you should be compensated. I believe that for a fact. You should be compensated. Who who do you get compensated from? The producer. That's the writing points, the royalties, the publishing, the producer. Because if you had a record out and you didn't pay the man for the record, he owns the record. Just like the studio, if you record in the studio and don't pay the studio time, they own everything that was in there. Or they have the right to hold it. Just to nip that butt. Because that's one of the clips that I've seen, and they always want to make Hove reference. He stole lyrics from Big, and I agree. I think it's more paying homage. And I'm sure Hove is definitely taking care of his estate, especially with publishing, outside of anything else he could do. Because I think they had a genuine relationship, like a brother, Jaguar, right? I think she gets mentioned because it's her hometown, and I really think he wanted to make that message clear to Questlove, and I'm sure that's gonna be a conversation after the show, because, like I said, he made it a big deal to mention the fact that Questlove is the one that introduced him. So I think that's very important. So yeah, the whole pushback, if you would call it that, the whole fight back. He picked the perfect opportunity. It wasn't a lyrical, like, oh, he spit bars. No, it was a venting situation that he did crafty, which was definitely crafted perfectly. It wasn't off the top of the dome. He thought that through. I'm not saying he wrote it down, but he thought that through. And I can see that being on one of them tracks. And everyone that was mentioned has ammunition to respond, whether it's whatever platform they're on, social media, music, blogs, podcasts, whatever, Twitter, whatever it is, he gave them an alley-oop to respond, because it's trending. It's still gonna spin back to him, and that's the way of success, which, like, we know, and like I said, we know he doesn't need a penny from anybody. He could just leave. We know this already. He can leave. He could just not be, like, never be seen again. He can do it. He has more than enough money to leave. He's the most successful hip hop artist ever. I wrote a paper about Hove in one of my college courses in 2006, and it wasn't even, like, to think 20 years ago, he was on his way, but he was nowhere near where he's at now. And I already just was like, yo, his career, boom, boom. You know, I don't agree with how some of the things transpired. But now that things have blossomed into the way they are, I don't blame him. I'm sorry to say it. I don't blame him. I think he could have did things differently. Of course, like, Dame is one of my idols in business and entrepreneurship. I think his personality is his worst feature. He's arrogant. He's never wrong. Anyone that's never wrong dangerous to themselves. Anyone who's never wrong is dangerous to themselves. And I pray that one day he admits he's wrong about something. And whatever that may be, it will change. It will change something in his life. Because he can say he's happy and all that, but I think he's free. But not comparing him to a homeless person, but homeless people are free also. You know? Like, they're free. They don't have to be at work. They don't have no bills due. They don't have to worry about feeding no mouths. But would you consider that a life you want? You know? And again, I think Dame is, I don't think he's broke at all. The way I look at money, I don't think Dame is broke. I agree with him not being broke. But I do think that he's not successful. I don't think he's successful. I don't think he's successful. Because if he was, he wouldn't come off as bitter and salty as he is. He's upset with Jay. He's upset with other people he worked with. But I think just because you worked with people doesn't mean you were the best thing in their life. I think he had a lot of people that didn't like him, but they needed his services. They needed his muscle. They needed his expertise, and they had to endure some terrible work conditions for that. But once they got to where they at, it's like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And on top of that, you imagine coming to someone who thinks they don't need you, and you working with them as them doing you a favor, when you're trying to actually help them. So they're not even humble. Because I'm pretty sure, even with the reasonable doubt, publishing the rights, whatever, that 1/3 that he had that he wouldn't let go of, he's now claiming it wasn't worth anything. Nobody wanted it. Why did you hold on to it then? Like, why did you hold on to it? And I don't want to make this a Dame bashing thing, because I'm praying for him. I know him and Hove is never going to rekindle. I don't think him and Hove is ever going to rekindle. Hove is very challenging. I think a lot of people that Hove were in business with and made amends with are not cool, because I don't think Hove ever wants to be anything equal. I think he wants to be on his, he calls himself Hove. He wants to be on, you have to be the big guy for him. So no one wants to acknowledge that. You can't be around him. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm gonna leave y'all with that. Let me know what you think. This is a rough video, more to come. You will like it. You don't have to subscribe. Eventually, if you feel yourself liking my content, get on board. Again,